Welcome to this edition of Morgan Asked For podcast. Kind of a switch here. Trevor is at home, and I'm on the road in a hotel room tonight down in Florida here to help my uncle kind of get some things organized and stuff like that. Just trying to help him out a little bit. Headed back up home in a couple days and back for the weekend and stuff. But on the road here in a hotel room in Gainesville, Florida, in Gator Country.
How is it down there? Is it warm?
It's nice. It's warm. It was kind of it's about 80 degrees, but it's humid here, so it's more like a summer day. But on Monday when we got here, it was like 78 degrees, and it was actually like 81 degrees in Iowa. So it was actually a little bit warmer, but the humidity's still here, and back home the humidity's obviously in the fall is not near what it is in the summer.
No, that's good. You go drive by the Florida Stadium? Go check that out at all?
I have not. I have before. I've been down here before. I have not yet. One of the things we did do, we're about. He lives a little bit outside of Gainesville, kind of towards the ocean a little bit. We're about 45, 50 miles to the ocean, and yesterday we did drive out there with him. He hadn't been out there since the hurricane, and Hurricane Debbie is the one that hit up closer to here. And kind of an entire Cedar Key, I believe, is the name of the town, and it's all the restaurants and bars that are on the ocean and everything they're not even attached to land anymore. They've got a long road ahead of them. Lots of work being done. They're tearing everything down. Lots of cranes, lots of crawlers and dump trucks and people working. But it's going to be a long winter for them. Obviously, they're probably going to try to get everything back ready to go for spring break next year and then for next summer.
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of pictures and videos from the damage down there, so hopefully they can get that cleaned up here pretty soon, and hopefully you're having a good time down there, seeing family and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a fun trip. There's just some things we need to do and take care of to help him out. But it is always good. I obviously – he's lived in Florida my entire life, so I don't see him often. We've been down here a few times, and he's been up a few times, but it's not enough. All right, that's kind of enough about kind of just lives. Anything cool with you, Trev, just in life or anything?
Not much, just at home. So nothing too exciting going on.
You get snow yet there? I mean, obviously, I did see that they got a bunch of snow in the mountains and stuff. So,
yeah, Pikes Peak has some snow. It's a lot of it's melted, but it's supposed to start cooling off come this weekend and then moving forward. So, snow's not too far away from being on the ground here.
Yeah. All right. Transition to sports here. Iowa State comeback win. We've talked about this. The number one thing for Iowa State to do right now is just to win football games. Obviously, you'd love to cover. You want to win convincingly. But as long as they win every football game, everything else will shake out, and it will be whatever it is. And obviously, I was there. One of the best atmospheres at Jack Trice I've ever been in. I've been to a lot of games there, since we've talked about this since 1998 when I went to school there. I've been to most of the games there. Not all of them, but most of the games there. And it's loud, it's full, it's exciting. And when they scored that touchdown with 30 seconds left, it was pretty invigorating in there, and that crowd absolutely lost it.
Yeah, from watching from home, you could tell from the broadcast that the stadium erupted, what you expected given the situation. So, yeah, they got the win. It wasn't pretty. It was close to looking like a loss. Now you got a bye week before Texas Tech, another home game. So you hope that Iowa State comes out more ready than they did in this one.
Yeah, it was one of those. Iowa State is really good against the pass. They with that 3-3 stack that they play, stopping the run is harder for them. And Gus Malzahn, South Florida or Central Florida is very much a running first team, and that's what they do. They throw it horribly. So it kind of took away Iowa State's strength. Iowa State likes to try to stop the run enough to make you throw it, and then we'll take advantage of passing. And they had a pick the other night. They didn't allow any passing, but they were patient enough in their game plan, and that's the best thing they do is to continue to run. And the other thing that happened the other night is they only had one drive where they really drove down. Everything else was big plays. 2 big running plays by their running back, 1 big running play by their quarterback, and then 2 essentially pick sixes. 1 was a pick six, and 1 ended up being down at the 1-yard line because he dropped the ball before he got to the end zone, and there was no clear recovery. So they got the ball where he fumbled it at the 1-yard line. So it wasn't like they drove down. It was a pick six. It was a pick, and one of the picks was a drop. He caught it, dropped it, and they picked it up and took it. And then 2 big runs. So there's 28 points, and then they scored on the first drive of the game, which is kind of Iowa State's MO, is they let them go down and score. I'm not going to say to let them, but that's what they did. They scored a first touchdown, and then 2 big runs and 2 pick sixes. And there's their 35 points.
Yeah, you wonder that UCF player that dropped the ball before the end zone. We see that 2 or 3 times every year in college, every once in a while in the NFL. For the life of me, I don't understand why guys continue to do that, because you see it on the highlights. All these guys got social media. They have to see it. That's pretty embarrassing. And, speaking of that play, we'll get into another one here later, but I think teams are going to have to be more aware when the ball hits the ground around the end zone. You got to teach your players to go get on it, just in case of a situation like that, because it happens every once in a while.
And you can't blame Iowa State for not falling on that ball. And what most of the time happens is the ball rolls out of bounds or rolls out of bounds after it gets in the end zone, and then it's easy. It's just a touchback, or it's out of bounds where maybe it went out of bounds at the half-yard line or whatever it is. But they're just sat right in the middle of the end zone on the E at Iowa State and just sat there. No one picked it up. Obviously, you'd love to have your players jump on it, but as soon as that official raises his hand and signals touchdown, you assume and think that it's a touchdown and the play's over, turn around, run back to your bench. And a lot of people were booing everything, but the officials did what they could do. There was no recovery, so they have to put it back where it was. The officials did that rule correctly, and unfortunately it did essentially just prolonged it 1 play. But it would have been a big play if it had been a touchback, but unfortunately it wasn't.
Yeah, the refs made the right call since nobody tried to pick up the ball or get on it after he dropped it. So, I mean, there was no clear possession otherwise. So it was the right call. It's just you see this every year in college football and even in high school. Guys showboating a little bit, dropping the ball right before the goal line, and it's like you would think at this point guys would learn, but I guess not.
Yeah, and that's where, like a Barry Sanders that always handed the ball to the official. That's where that comes into play. And I know coaches say it. And the issue is that guy's super excited. He's a defensive player. He doesn't score very often. And he's not thinking that. He's like, holy smokes, we're beating a top 10 team on the road. We're way underdogs. I just made a huge play. Everything but crossing that goal line and handing the ball to the official is the last thing on his mind.
Yeah, he was definitely excited, but I don't know. The more and more we see guys do this, like I said, it'll probably continue because there's been enough proof over the years of, hey, don't do this, and guys continue to do it. So I'm sure it'll happen year after year moving forward. Yeah,
so can't blame anybody. I want to get into Rocco Becht a little bit, the quarterback. The week prior at West Virginia had a super emotional game, had a great football game. His dad went into the Hall of Fame. His mom was a West Virginia athlete, is from West Virginia. His dad is from Philadelphia, not super far away from West Virginia. And he went in there and, if your mom and dad are athletes there, and obviously they were New York Jets, they were in New York or lived in Florida, wherever they lived. But he cheered for West Virginia when he was little, and he probably still cheers for West Virginia when he's not playing them. and probably deep down wanted to play for them or have a chance to play for them and never got that opportunity. Played a great game, came back against a much inferior team than West Virginia, I believe, and did not play well. But when it was needed and when plays needed to be made, he made the plays. And he did it more with his legs in this game. He carried the ball 20 times, had 90 yards, and then 2 touchdowns, and then the 2-point conversion to make it a 3-point game to make them get a field goal just to tie. Over the course of the game, he only completed 43% of his passes, and it was just one of his worst, probably his worst statistical game as a Cyclone quarterback, but the best game overall, and in a great leader and comeback victory for the Cyclones.
Yeah, he had all the reason in the world to kind of hang his head, was having a bad game with those picks, but he came through at the end. And I did want to focus on one play. I know I text you, and maybe you know where I'm going with this, maybe you don't. It's they get a first down with 1:04 left at the UCF 19, and he spikes the ball. And to me, that's a big no-no. There's too much time left in that situation. If there's 30 seconds left, I understand spiking it, but in that situation, downs are more important than time.
Yeah, and I thought it was same thing.
And it almost cost him. Now it didn't, what ifs and all that type of stuff. But second down incomplete, third downs where you got the penalty, which I thought it was the right call. But that flag, at least on TV, that flag came late. If that flag doesn't come, all of a sudden you're at 4th and 10. So I thought that spike was a big mistake because you cut your chances of getting a first down by 25%. And maybe they didn't have the right personnel or whatever and panicked a little bit. But I would hope in the future you'd have a play ready to run there because there was 1:04 left. That's plenty of time from the 19-yard line.
Yeah, I did not like that either. Just you're wasting it down. As you said, it ended up not mattering. He ran it 2 times inside because there was still – I think he ran it and got tackled at like the 2-yard line, and they still had 30 seconds left. And so they ran to the line, and he snuck it in from the 1. Obviously – and they scored with 30 seconds left. So they obviously had plenty of time. And that was coming right at us where our seats are. The pass interference was – that was right at the corner, right in front of our seats. And it was the right call. The issue was the official standing right there didn't throw the flag. It was the back judge over by the goalpost that threw the flag. Now, the hand fighting happened between the player and the official that was standing closest, so he might have been blocked out a little bit, but they did not call pass interference at all game long, either team. It just was not called. There was hand fighting and just, I thought, holding and pass interference on both teams. Iowa State was doing it as well, and it just wasn't called all night long. And they finally called one, and we needed it. Like you said, it would have been 4th and 10 from the 19-yard line, I believe. And really with only 3 downs to have a chance. But I want to go back a little bit. This is the second game that Iowa State has been able to win with punting the football with about 3 minutes left. And both situations, they came back and won the football game. And the 2-minute timeout, I think, has helped Iowa State win 2 football games that without this 2-minute timeout, they don't win. Iowa State got the football back. I believe it was 1:30, no timeouts, and 80 yards to go. But they were able to call all 3 of their timeouts on defense plus the 2-minute timeout. And in that, it was one of those Central Florida got 1, maybe 2 first downs in that drive. And if they would have got 1 more, it would have been over. But they stopped them good enough. And I think it would have had to been 1 less first down for them without that 2-minute timeout. Then obviously with Iowa State versus Iowa at Kinnick earlier in the year, second game, Iowa State needed all the time because they kicked that field goal with 4 seconds left. So I believe that's that rule change and Coach Campbell spending time. Obviously, that's practiced knowing when to use their timeouts and everything. It's not random when those coaches call timeouts. They know what they're doing. They have a coach in the box. They have a book that they use. They've got all the analytics. They talk about it in meetings all week. And both times Coach Campbell has done it right this year. He's got the golden touch right now. Doesn't mean to say this coming week it's going to go wrong. It's not going to work. But and you can think a few times previously with Brock Purdy, who obviously is a very good quarterback, great quarterback in the NFL now, where they had the ball with a chance to win against Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game, had everything set up for them, and it didn't work. So just because you have the ball with the chance doesn't mean it will, but you have to give your team a chance. And Coach Campbell is doing that correctly with the use of his timeouts on defense.
Yeah, the 2-minute warning is a big deal now with college, the change there. And, Iowa State's finding out that sometimes punting is winning. It's working for you guys right now. It's not necessarily working for the Hawkeyes anymore, but we'll get into them.
Yeah, just, a couple more things. I want to give a shout out to the operations and the game day atmosphere at Iowa State, around the stadium, in the stadium, the music. It is so much better this year than it's ever been. They figured it out, or at least getting much better. It used to be when you had that 3-minute timeout in between each one, you'd have that guy standing out in the middle of the field with the clock, and you'd just be watching it. There are times now they're doing different little sketches. They've got a in-game host that does some things. Even sometimes they put on other games and just watch it for 3 minutes, which is great, I think. I mean, I love that too. They'll have the, just for example, Baylor versus whoever. It doesn't matter. Or Alabama, Georgia. Or it doesn't matter what game, but just a game on for that 3 minutes. That's awesome. It gives you something to do instead of just sitting there twiddling your thumbs and waiting and making the game seem longer than it already is. It is a super long game. It started at 6:30. And I know Keith Murphy talked about it on their show, Murph and Andy on Iowa Everywhere, and he was at the game along with Andy, but John Sears and Mark Freund, who were doing the sports and everything, they didn't even have the final score in the sports because the game wasn't over yet at 10:30. It was an over 4-hour football game.
Yeah, that game went late, and you're right. It is nice when stadiums do stuff like that in between plays where you got 2 or 3 minutes to kill. It is nice to see the other games on the Jumbotron or on a screen somewhere, because sometimes you can't get real good reception on your phone to kind of check what other games are what's going on.
That's been much better too. There's been I try not to look at my phone a whole lot and everything, but I do sometimes. And this year and last year been much better self-service than previous. A couple of years ago, there was no point in even having your phone there. It just didn't matter. It didn't work. But they're doing a much, much better job with the game day entertainment and the game day operations and your promotions department, whoever else is all involved. And I know Mary Pink, I believe, is involved in that as the head person. And I don't know her necessarily, but I do know her husband, Kevin Pink, in a roundabout way. So.
No, that's all good to hear. And it's going to be even better when the new Applebee's opens, with the world's largest rooftop bar, as Zach likes to say.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. And I don't know if you heard this, but Wells Fargo Arena is now going to be called the Casey's Center, starting July 1 next year, and they're going to paint a big Casey's logo on the top of Wells Fargo Arena in Des Moines. So that's going to be different too. But yeah, the Applebee's and I believe they did announce that there's going to be.
Is there actually an Applebee's going up?
Oh. I don't think so. There's going to be some restaurant and bars there, but I do not believe it's Applebee's, but I don't know for sure. That's just kind of the joke that we've had.
Zach's going to be disappointed if it's not.
Right. If I never ate at an Applebee's again, I'd be okay with that. So I'm not a big
fan. I got to tell you, speaking of Applebee's, I joke with the guys on the chat. I think Applebee's has stepped their game up recently.
What?
I think their food's got a little bit better. Yeah.
Well, I'm missing out. I don't go there. So
I used to not either, but if you're looking for a bargain, because everything's so damn expensive nowadays, I've been going to Applebee's more often than Chili's, so kind of getting sidetracked. But I think both those restaurants have actually, their food's gotten better. But anyway,
well,
if you're looking to
Applebee's
save it
has Dan Campbell as their waiter now, so I'm sure he's whipping them into shape.
Yeah, that maybe that's the key.
Yeah. So, yeah, and as you kind of pointed out just a minute ago, but every game is the most important game. So, bye week this week, get healthier. You're not going to get healthy, but get healthier. And then after that, play Texas Tech, who going in, they lost last week. They were undefeated in the conference going into last week. And just win every game. Just win. And make that last game of the year against Kansas State for all. It may not matter, but make it so you control your destiny. You're at home. These games actually look a little bit harder today than they did at the beginning of the year or even 2-3 weeks ago. Texas Tech is much better than I thought they were going to be. Now, they lost last week, so maybe not. But Kansas looked good last Saturday. Now, their record's still horrible, but they looked good last Saturday, scoring a bunch of points. The quarterback looked much better. We'll see how it looks again this week. Cincinnati is kind of a team that's creeping up the Big 12 standings and even the rankings overall. Their 2 losses are, I believe, a 1 and a 2-point loss to Texas Tech and to Pitt, I believe. And their defensive coordinator was our defensive coordinator, or their defensive coordinator was our linebacker coach for the last 10 years under Campbell. So there's going to be no secrets there, no surprises. He knows what we're trying to do on offense. And then obviously he runs the same defense we do, that's kind of a wash, I think. But it's at home, which is a good thing. Kansas is at Arrowhead, so it's not at Kansas. That's a good thing. Then you go to Utah, who we thought very much would be probably the hardest game on the schedule. As of right now, it is not the hardest. They are in disarray, fired their coordinator. Cam Rising's out. Isaac Wilson is in. But that's 3 weeks from now. Are they going to be able to turn around and get a little bit better between now and then? And then you finish with Kansas State, who has 1 loss in the conference to BYU. And if they run the table playing Iowa State, I would assume if they beat Iowa State in that game, they would go to the Big 12 championship. And then it just depends what happens anywhere else if Iowa State would get in.
Yeah, Iowa State controls their own destiny. Everything's right in front of them. They do have some tough games coming up. Got the bye week, and then we've talked about it before. That game out over in Utah, the record's not very good. That's still going west, altitude. That'll be a tough test no matter what their record is. Iowa State's going to need to come ready to play in that one.
Yeah, so here's an argument that we were having. I shouldn't say argument, but a debate that we were having at Iowa State on Saturday, especially it was Friday night, really more Friday night, when BYU was playing Oklahoma State and Oklahoma State was winning for a lot of that game. Do we want BYU to be undefeated or do we want BYU to lose? I am in the camp where I want every team to lose because I want Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game, even if they would lose a game or 2. So I'm in the camp where I want every team to lose that's at the top of the stand. I want BYU to lose every game from here up to the end. I want Utah to lose every game from here to the end. I want Kansas State to lose every game. I want Cincinnati to lose every game because there's no guarantees that more than one team get in the playoffs. Now, I truly believe if Iowa State and BYU would be 12-0 in the Big 12 championship game with what's happened in the SEC conference, where kind of they're all beating up on each other, I believe both teams will get in the playoffs, but I don't trust them to do it. So if there are losses from BYU or Iowa State's not undefeated, then only one team's getting in for sure. You want to be in that game because then it's just a one-game play. You're in the playoffs just 1 week earlier, 2 weeks earlier, really, but it's just a playoff game. And if you win, you're in, and you lose, you're out. So I'm in the side where I want everybody to lose but Iowa State.
Yeah, well, Iowa State has that luxury because they're undefeated. So
Right.
if the other teams lose and Iowa State wins out, they're obviously in. The Big 12 champ is getting in no matter what. So they're getting one team in. We know that. So, yeah, as long as Iowa State keeps taking care of business, the rest of it really doesn't matter. But still a lot of work to do.
Right. Just if they end up being 10-2, I still want them in that game. That's the argument. If you're 10, if somehow you lose 2 of these games coming up, you're 10-2. If you get that game and you win that game, you're in. It doesn't matter what your record is. So that's where I just think you want teams to lose. Now, if you're in the boat where you want more than one team in the playoff, then you are cheering for BYU and you are cheering for Iowa State and you want them both at 12-0. But everybody projects that. Everybody talks about that. You look at playoff predictions. But that's not reality. There's always upsets. There's always – and the rankings will come out November 5th, and they'll be this, and they will not be even remotely close to what happens when the playoffs actually happen. And even in that championship weekend, there's going to be teams that win or lose that are going to drop them, maybe not in and out of the playoffs, but they're going to have Georgia in as the number 2 team in the country, or maybe the 1 team in the country. They lose to LSU, let's just say LSU. Well, now all of a sudden LSU is that SEC champ, so now they drop to the 4. It just moves everything around. Georgia's still going to go to the playoff in that situation, but it does move everybody around it. If somehow a team like LSU with 2 or 3 losses wins the SEC and Iowa State would be 12-0, there's a chance that Iowa State's not that 4 seed, or the lowest, automatic qualifier champ. They could get to that 3 seed. And I just think that's a big, big deal because now you're not playing the 5 seed, which would be a Georgia in that situation. I think you want to stay away from that SEC runner-up as long as you can.
Yeah, for sure, especially if you're going to be one of the first 4. Now, if you get a home playoff game, that changes things. If you're not one of the top 4, that would be pretty cool. But it should be fun. I mean, I'm excited for the playoff rankings to come out. It's exciting. 12 teams get in. They're going to do, the next 4 out, each week when they do this. So it just gives a lot more fan bases hope to get in the dance.
Yeah, I mean, and we can kind of transition to Iowa here, but Iowa was in that situation going into Saturday where if they went out, there's a chance. It wasn't a good chance, but there was a chance, especially with who their 2 losses were to. Iowa State's undefeated, and Ohio State is not undefeated, but one of the best teams in the country. So their losses were quote-unquote good losses. But obviously with the loss at Michigan State, they're out. They're 4-3 on the year. Lots of people talking about Kirk Ferentz now. Again, I will stand by this until it happens. Kirk Ferentz has earned the right to make his own decision on when he wants to leave. I truly think that he could lose every game from here to the rest of the season, and they still should not fire him. Now, if he wants out, if he resigns, that's fine. That's up to him. And I think there's a chance he resigns and retires at the end of this year, no matter what happens. He's at the stage in his career that I think that's a question every year. And he's earned that right to make that decision. But the quarterback play is just so bad and so much of a problem that he is going to potentially hurt his legacy on quarterbacks.
Yeah, most certainly. Whether he gets let go or retires at the end of the season, I'm at the point I don't even really care right now about that. It's just when you looked at the conference schedule that Iowa had, 7-5 is now in play. 6-6 is in play if things really go sideways, and you wouldn't have thought that before the season. Most people had them 8-4 to 10-2. That game at Michigan State, I'll say this every week. I know Michigan State won the game. They're still last in my rankings. They don't ever get to move up. So I hate Michigan State. They'll always be last to me. But they won the game, over 200 yards rushing, almost 500 yards of total offense. I think I didn't have it written down, but I think Iowa only had 2 first downs in the first half. Regardless, it wasn't very many. So the defense is on the field the entire time. Sullivan it's time for Sullivan to play. They play Northwestern this week. I'd start him, and
that's his old school.
Cade should be on a yeah, it's his old school. I mean, I'd let him play a lot. If he doesn't start, I'd give Cade a very short leash. But yeah, this season, the season's on the line now. We're obviously not going to go to the playoff. That's out. But could we still have a 9-3, 8-4 season, a respectable season? But it's, you got Wisconsin's playing really well. Nebraska is going to be a tough game at the end of the season, regardless. I know they got blown out by Indiana, but that's going to be a tough one still. So this was looking like a good year for Iowa schedule wise, and it could be one of those 7-5 years where it's just kind of total disappointment.
Yeah, and I believe I was right in this prediction, and I talked about it. You can tell me if I'm wrong here, but I thought that the defense wouldn't be as good and the offense would be quite a bit better, and I truly believe it is, but you just can't be quite as good on defense and quite as good on special teams year after year after year. There's going to be a little mean to the regression to the mean. They've gotten better on offense, but they're dropping. They're still a very good defense and a very good to great special teams, but it's just those few. They're not number 3 in the country on defense. Now they're number 12 or whatever it is, but just those few spots, their tackling's not quite as good. They did not force a punt all day in East Lansing, which I'd like to know the last time that happened to a Phil Parker defense. I don't know that. Probably should have looked that stat up, but I did not.
Yeah, it's got to be a long time. I know Brett sent something off Twitter. I don't have Twitter, but I could see what the headline was. I think it's been 57 games since Iowa's had a 300-yard passer at the quarterback position. I think the next closest was like 22 games. So it's all the proof is in the numbers with the offense. But yeah, the defense isn't as good this year. You predicted that before the beginning of the season. They had a good 5 or 6 year stretch of defensive special teams, and that's slipped a little. They're still pretty good. There's a lot of teams in the nation that would like to have their defense and their special teams, but it slipped just enough that the margin for error just isn't there like it used to be.
Yeah, they pin them at the 12-yard line instead of the 2-yard line. I mean, it's just little things like that. The 12-yard line is still really good, but that 10 yards makes a difference because now you don't get that safety. And then they punt it. Now your offense only has to go, instead of 80 yards, they only have to go 55. Just little things like that, that hidden yardage. And then their tackling's not as good. And Riley Moss and Cooper DeJean and players like that, they don't have a player like that on their defense right now on the back end. Kind of thought Xavier Wampa was going to be that, but he's not.
I think he's probably one of the more overrated big-time prospects that they've ever gotten on defense. He's a good player, but I'm not really all that impressed with Xavier over the years. He's a hell of an athlete, still a good player, but he's disappointed me more than I would like. So yeah, Iowa's season's on the line now. You got to win versus Northwestern. You got a tough one after that versus Wisconsin, and then the following week out at UCLA. I actually might go to that game. I'm going to be out in LA and San Diego that week. Actually be leaving San Diego on Friday. So I'm thinking about using maybe some hotel points and going up to watch Iowa at UCLA. I've been to the Rose Bowl before. I looked at tickets a little bit ago. They're right at about $100, which I really don't want to pay that. But if they drop to maybe under 70 or $60, I think I might end up going.
That kind of shocks me. They're still $100. Would they rather have not as many people in there or lower the prices to like $20? Because that place is not full ever when UCLA plays there.
Yeah, I just looked on Ticketmaster and StubHub and all the normal ones that you always look at.
I mean, I understand it, but I'm surprised they wouldn't, because you can see certain games you can get in for like $4 or $3, or now obviously you're gonna have your fees and stuff on top of that, but just a true price of a ticket, $10 or $15, $20. Just to get people in there, and then you go buy a $10 beer and a $8 hot dog and a whatever. That once you get in, then they got you. Just surprised they don't do that, but maybe they'd rather not have as many people there. I don't know how that all works.
Well, they're probably planning on a lot of Iowa folks coming out. So they're keeping the price up. Now, if Iowa loses to Wisconsin or to Northwestern, those tickets will probably drop a little bit. And I'm sure the day of, the tickets will start dropping after lunch. So I'll probably look, unless the prices drop really soon, I'll probably check that morning. And if they've dropped, right. I might end up going to it.
And that's the problem with all these electric tickets. You can't just go to a guy on the street right outside the stadium and say, here's $10 right when the game starts or whatever, or here's $5. You want that or you want nothing? And most of the time they give it to you just because once the game starts or, right at about kickoff, they're like, well, at least I'll get something out of it.
Yeah. Even if I remember when I was younger, you do too. You can miss the first 5 or 10 minutes of the first quarter, give a guy $5 or $10 and get into the stadium. So yeah, I don't really know. I don't really know if that happens much anymore, especially like you said with the electronic tickets. But yeah, since I'm going to be out there, I'd like to go. I went to the Rose Bowl game when Iowa played Stanford years and years ago and got destroyed by Christian McCaffrey. It was still a cool experience to be at the game. Yeah. But yeah, if the tickets are cheap enough, I might end up going.
Yeah, when you're close to something like that, yeah, it would be great to go. I'd love to see this. And since you've already been there, it's a little bit different, but I've never been there. I'd love to go to a game there. I'd obviously really love to see a Rose Bowl there, but not too far behind it would be just to see a game there. And it's going to be a night game. It's a Friday night, so it's a standalone. It's going to be dark over the mountains and everything. So it'll be kind of cool.
Yeah, if I'm out there, I'll probably give in, and even if the ticket's like $80, I'll probably end up going. But I'm hoping the price comes down. But yeah, if Iowa had a little better record, I would for sure be going. But since they're struggling, it's not quite as exciting to go to that right now. But yeah, Iowa season's on the line. Got to start putting up some W's, or this is going to be one of those seasons we look back on like, what the heck happened?
Yeah. Kind of moving on to the rest of college football. Indiana, still story of the year, I believe, in college football that no one's talking about still. Now, game day is going there this week, but they absolutely put a hurt on Nebraska. I thought Nebraska would win that football game. I'm not completely shocked that Indiana won. I'm completely shocked at the way they did it and the points that were put up. Now, they've destroyed everybody they played, and Nebraska is just another one on that list. Is Indiana for real, Trevor?
Well, I wasn't buying them a couple weeks ago just because they're Indiana. It's tough for me to imagine. Right. Indiana's basically always been bad most of our life. So, they don't get the benefit of the doubt, I guess, in my mind. And maybe they should right now. They're starting to for sure. And their schedule, I looked at the other day. I forget who they played, but it looked pretty favorable the rest of the way. So they're probably going to finish with a really good record. I think their quarterback is out Saturday, though, which could be an issue. I thought I saw that. I could be wrong. I'd have to go double check. But yeah, that'll be a pretty cool experience for game day to be there. I can't remember the last time game day was there.
I would almost say they've never been. I mean, I would say they have never been there.
That would be my guess. Or if they have, it had to be one of the first few years that game day was out running around starting up.
And then
so
Ohio State.
That'll be a pretty. Yeah, something like that. That'll be a pretty cool experience there, especially for those fans. They haven't had a season like this, like I said, probably ever. So. We're going to find out. I still don't know because they're Indiana, but maybe I just got to get that out of my mind.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're going to play. Are they playing Ohio State, Penn State? They've got to play at least one of those two, don't they?
I'm pulling it up right now. So Indiana, they've got Washington this Saturday at Michigan State, home versus Michigan. Michigan's not as good, but they are at Ohio State November 23rd and then home versus Purdue. So if you look at that, they probably at least got at least 2 victories, maybe 3 or 4, and then probably they lost to it at Ohio State.
Yeah. So, yes, you're going to have essentially that Ohio State game might come down to who gets in the Big Ten title game if Oregon stays undefeated there. So, and then Penn State's going to have something to say about that as well. But they have to play Ohio State too, I guess. Yeah, we might have a whole bunch of and we're going to get into that coming up here, and we've talked about it before. But you might have 4 teams with 1 loss, and then who goes?
Yeah, I know we're going to do our. I text you. We're going to do our. If we were in charge of the committee, we're going to do our 12-team playoff. I don't know if you want to get into that yet, or
Let's go ahead and let's talk about kind of what happened in the SEC. Georgia beats Texas. Ended up being a little bit closer than it really was, I believe. Georgia had pretty much dominated that football game. Ewers and Arch Manning played, and I think that might become an issue. It's not anybody's fault. I think Ewers got hurt. Arch Manning came in, and now there's some question of who's really better. Because Arch played pretty well when he was in there, but Ewers has the experience and has played really well in top 5 team games. And it shows that they hadn't really played too many. Michigan, that was supposed to be a game of the year. It was I love those teams when they do games like that. But Michigan's not very good. That's just the reality of the season. And it's proving that more and more each week. And Texas hadn't played anybody, and Georgia had. I mean, Georgia's played Clemson. They played Alabama. I mean, those are good games. I've been in a dogfight with Kentucky. And I think just Georgia's pedigree over the last 5 years with Kirby Smart, winning championships and being right there with Alabama, was a little bit better situated for that. And then Alabama lost to Tennessee, so they've got 2 losses now. They're not out of it. They went out. They're still in the playoff, even with 2 losses, because they're Alabama.
Yeah, Kirby Smart said it there for the Texas game. Georgia has the experience, as we know. They went in that game ready. Texas, they had all the celebrities on the sideline, movie actors, famous athletes, all that. It was more of a show. Texas defense actually played pretty well. Carson Beck actually worked himself, probably out of the top 10 pick for sure as of right now. That was a bad game for Carson Beck. There's a lot of people think he dropped out of the first. I'm not ready to say that yet because we know quarterbacks get overdrafted in the first round nowadays. But anyway, it was a bad game for him and a good win for Georgia. You said last week you thought they were maybe the best team in the country still. Kind of looked like it on Saturday. And then for Alabama, tough loss. Everybody's on Kalen DeBoer. I still think they're going to be fine. I don't know if they're going to make the playoff. That would be pretty rough in his first season to not make a 12-team playoff. But it's his first year. He's replacing the greatest coach of all time. I'm not ready to run him out of town yet, like some of their fans might be. He deserves a good 3 to 5 years there.
Yeah, he loses another one. He's going to be they're going to want him gone. So, all right, now let's move into your 12-team playoff. I'm going to let you go first. Why don't you go with your first 4 conference champs? They will get the first round bye. Their first games will be essentially what we would call the New Year's Six bowl games. It's the Fiesta Bowl, it's the Sugar Bowl, it's the Orange Bowl. I don't remember which ones they really actually are, but it's those type of games. I believe they're December 31st and January 1st are the games. They will be playing the winners of the games that happened the week before. But who are your 4 conference champions?
I'm going to go Oregon gets the 1 seed as of right now. Georgia gets the number 2 seed. And then it came down between Iowa State and Miami. I give Iowa State the 3 seed. I think they have a better resume than Miami does at this point. So I'm giving Iowa State the 3 and then Miami the 4 seed.
Okay. So mine's similar at the top. I'm going to go Oregon 1, Georgia 2. I think those are the 2 best teams in the country. I'm going to go Clemson 3. I think they win this, or the ACC. And then I'm going to put Iowa State 4. So those are mine. So you have Miami in, and I have Clemson. But I think that game might come down to that.
Yeah, for sure. And then you want me to just go through the 4 first round matchups?
Yep, and then just go ahead and do the first round matchups.
So I didn't necessarily do the best teams of the rankings. I did some of the teams I like. I did some matchups I want to see because again, this is my playoff. So my rules. That's kind of the way I did it. So the 8-9 matchup, the winner would play Oregon. I've got Tennessee hosting Indiana. I would like to see if Indiana's the real deal. Go down to Tennessee to be a tough environment. I want to see a Big Ten versus an SEC school. I don't want to see SEC versus SEC there if possible.
And then, Indiana to Tennessee would not be like super far. So Indiana people could get down there. That'd be a great environment. Knoxville, you've been there. it's one of the best places in college football.
And then, yeah, it definitely is. It's a cool place. And then the 7-10 matchup, the winner would play Georgia. I've got Penn State hosting LSU. I just want to see an SEC team go to Happy Valley in a night game in the wintertime. I think that'd be a fun matchup. For the 6-11 matchup, the winner would go on to play Iowa State. I've got Texas as a 6 seed hosting a team I really don't want to see make the playoff, but I think it would be just a TV rating galore. Texas hosting Notre Dame.
Okay.
And then for the last matchup, winner would play the number 4 seed Miami. I've got Ohio State hosting Boise State.
Yep.
So I left out Clemson just because I'm kind of tired of Clemson, even though they probably should have been. And I left out BYU, and I really don't. I'd be okay with Notre Dame missing, but I think Notre Dame and Texas would be a heck of a matchup, at least for ratings in the TV anyway.
Yeah, so you got games in Columbus, Austin, Happy Valley, and Knoxville. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go. I went a little bit more of who I actually think it's not necessarily who I want in there. It's who I think is actually going to get there, and who. So the 5-12, I have Ohio State and Boise, just like you in Columbus, and obviously the winner of that would play Iowa State. So it definitely, on paper, would be Iowa State versus Ohio State. I mean, that's kind of a mouthful, and get a lot of confusion there on how to say it. But in Columbus, there, I think you had the same matchup. Yep. 6-11. I've got Texas. I think you have them at 6 as well. So we were right there. Now this is where I went BYU. I'm going with the Big 12 having both undefeated teams in the championship game, and then BYU loses that game. They get the 11. That game's in Austin. And they're not Notre Dame big, but they have that same religious. If you're a Mormon, you watch BYU. So they have that same religious background and support that Notre Dame does, just in a much smaller scope. And then my 7-10, which is it's eerie. You have the same place. I've got Penn State hosting Tennessee. So I've got Tennessee headed up to Happy Valley instead of LSU. But it's kind of funny how we have the same teams hosting these games. So that's the 7-10. And then the 8-9, this is where quite a bit different here. I've got Alabama against Miami in Tuscaloosa. I think Miami gets in, and then I think Alabama runs the table and gets in as well. I just don't see how they leave out Alabama in the first 12-team playoff at the expense of Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's going to be tough to leave out Alabama. We know there's going to be an SEC bias. I have 4 making it, but if the committee really wants to, I wouldn't be surprised if they'd put a 5th in. The problem is, you and I talked before the season, Notre Dame's such a draw, though, that the networks are going to push to get Notre Dame in if they can. So that'll be a struggle if Notre Dame is in contention. If Notre Dame loses another, then I think we'd all agree they can't get in.
Yeah, and that's where the Iowa State BYU. Now, how cool would it be, if Iowa State could host one of those games? If they ended up being 5, 6, 7, or 8 seed. But in order to host a game, that day that you lose that Big 12 championship game, until that playoff committee announces who's going, is going to be one tough 14 hours or whatever, 24 hours, whatever it is. That'll be one nerve-wracking day because you very much think you're not in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for Iowa State or the Big 12 as a whole, you want Notre Dame to keep losing. If you can get Notre Dame out of there, that opens up potentially another spot for either the Big 12 or maybe a 5th SEC team, depending on how they want to do it.
So the way I have it broke down, I've got 4 SEC, I got 3 Big 10, 2 ACC, 2 Big 12, and then the group of 5. So I think you're roughly the same. Well, you've got Notre Dame. So you only have 3 SEC teams in?
Now I got 4 SEC, 4 Big 10, Big 12, ACC,
Okay.
Boise State, and Notre Dame.
Yeah. So you don't have the two Big 12 teams in. You've got Notre Dame in for BYU. So
yeah, but I'd be happy seeing BYU get in, or I really don't want to see Clemson in. They probably be in right now, obviously, but I'm tired of Clemson, so I just didn't put them in because of that.
I think they went out and their only loss will be to Georgia, and obviously it was a blowout loss, but yeah. So and then Miami, just depends if they lose one or lots to go with that. Just now, here's a question on that. So the games the game times are this. So December 20th, Friday night, that's my birthday, is a 7 p.m. standalone game. And let's go with your playoff. So you got Ohio State, Boise State, Texas, Notre Dame, Penn State, LSU, Tennessee, Indiana. Let's go through what you would do in a TV situation. So you got December 20th, let's just say 7 p.m. Friday night, standalone, no issues. And then you've got December 21st, you've got 11 a.m., and then you got like 2:30, and then I think 6 or 7, so an evening game. And I believe the 6:30, 7 o'clock game is a standalone game, I believe. But on Saturday, there are NFL games, and I'm 99% sure the Chiefs play at noon against, it doesn't matter who, but the Chiefs play at noon. So that first game is going to go head-to-head with the NFL and the Kansas City Chiefs. Which game do you serve up to the NFL? And
I'll start with
which one do you put on Friday night? With your matchup, I know who I put on Friday night.
I'm putting Texas Notre Dame on Friday night.
Yep, that's the one. If that matchup happens, that's the standalone. That'll get 20 million people to watch it on Friday night. That's the first playoff game. The biggest thing. Absolutely. That'd be Friday night, 7 p.m.
And then starting on Saturday, the early game, the 11 o'clock game, I would do Boise State at Ohio State.
Yep.
Because that'll probably be the biggest gap there. And then the 2:30 game would be Indiana at Tennessee.
Yep.
And then the night game, it's got to be Happy Valley, LSU at Penn State. You got to have that be a night game.
Yep. Whiteout at Happy Valley. LSU goes into a place very similar to Death Valley. If the roles were reversed, I actually think I'd still want that game. Say LSU was hosting Penn State, I'd want that in Baton Rouge, and I'd want, Garth Brooks singing Baton Rouge as Penn State walks out. I mean, that's what you want.
Yeah, those are two of the best stadiums. So that if it was at Penn State or at LSU, that needs to be a night game.
Yep. So you got two choices there. You got the Friday night, or you got the Saturday night. But both those stadiums need to be at night. I 100% agree. I think we're very much in agreement on who you'd put where with that. So, and then obviously the in Knoxville, Tennessee, it was start at light and end during darkness there. So,
how would you do yours?
I would do very much the same. Yeah, I'd go. See, I don't have the Texas Notre Dame, so that. See, I think the Boise State Ohio State game is the 11th. I think that's the one you serve up, but that's tough with Ohio State being serving them up to the NFL. But I just think that's the least sexy game. I'm going to go Alabama, Miami on Friday night. It's all about Alabama. Alabama's the team. This playoff is made for teams like Alabama, so they're never not in it. And put them on Friday night. And then I'd put Penn State at 7 p.m. Saturday night, and then Texas at 2:30.
Yeah, I think you and I would agree on either of our matchups on how we would slot it.
If you wanted to tell me to switch the Friday, Saturday night. If you wanted to put Penn State at Tennessee on Friday night, or Tennessee at Penn State, I'm not going to argue with you. But we're Happy Valley needs to be at night if it's hosting.
Yeah, and Ohio State could be a night game too. I think if they're playing a more prestigious program, Boise State's good, but that would probably be the game that you would expect on paper at least to be the least competitive.
Is there a chance? Let's kind of do just a scenario here that if Boise State runs the table and wins convincingly, and let's say Iowa State would win the Big 12 conference with one loss, is there a chance Boise State's ahead of Iowa State with their one loss being 3 points on the road at Oregon?
I don't know. I mean, Washington State, UNLV.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't play that. In my opinion, I would still probably give Iowa State the nod because they're playing a Big 12 schedule, which I think is better than the Mountain West. Now, that 3-point loss at Oregon is really impressive for Boise State,
especially if Oregon wins the Big 10 undefeated. I mean that's where everybody has to realize this. If Oregon would happen to lose one or two games coming in, then it changes everything. But if Oregon is the number one team in the country undefeated, that's a really good loss.
Yeah, I'd probably still give it to Iowa State, and then you got to wonder if the committee do they want to have a game at Boise State. It's a smaller area of the country. I don't know if that would play a factor or not in that.
Yeah, I don't. And that's the thing.
Well, excuse me, no, I'm wrong on that because you're talking if they got one of the top 4 seats, then that wouldn't matter.
Right.
So yeah, never mind on that. I don't know. I'd still probably put Iowa State above them.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not disagreeing, but I just think there is a few scenarios where that team might not be the 12 seed, or is there a chance they're not the 12 seed? Just are they up a spot or two?
Yeah, I think they could fight for an 11 or 10 seed potentially. I think that would be in play.
Yeah, I really, if that is their only loss and Oregon's the number one team in the country, I could definitely see them not being the 12 seed.
Yeah,
and give the 3-loss Alabama the 12 seed. You know what I mean? I could see that.
Yeah, that's what's going to make it fun when they start doing these. Like you said, November 5th, they're going to come out with the first edition of this, and we'll see how it progresses every week. But it's going to be fun to see because when they release that first playoff bracket, every game is going to be super important at that point on. The stakes are going to be really high. The fan bases that are in know like, hey, we maybe can't lose again, and the teams that are just outside of it know, hey, we probably have to win out.
So are they doing the top 25 like they've done in the past? Even though, obviously team number 25 has essentially no chance of getting in the playoff. They did rank them 1 through 25. And that was a big thing that Iowa State was ranked a lot of that time. And they used that as a recruiting tool / just every week you saw that I-State logo or your logo. And it doesn't matter what team you are, but you're going to see an Indiana logo. You're going to see a Colorado logo. You're going to see a Boise State logo, a Navy, Army. Are they ranking 25 or are they just going to do the projected 12-team playoff with like the first 4 out like they do the NCAA tournament? I don't know. I'm asking.
I don't know either. My guess is they'll do 25 down to 17 very quickly, like 10 to 15 seconds on each team. They'll do it quick, and then they'll do the top 4 teams, and then they'll do the first 4 out, and then they'll do the 5, 6, 7, 8 who's hosting, and then the final 4 that are in. Would be my guess is probably how they'll do it. But I would think they'd still show the rankings of 25 through 17 quickly, and then focus on the 12 and then the first 4 out.
Okay, because obviously, just for example, Oregon and Ohio State are both ranked in the top 5. But they can't be, or even, say Oregon's 1 and Ohio State's 4. Well, they can't be the 1 and the 4 seed. That's not possible. The highest the second team can be is a 5. So I didn't know if they were going to rank them that way, or I hope they just go 1 through 25 and then once they rank them, then they can go do the bracket at how it would be. Iowa State is the Big 12 champs, so they're the 4 seed, and then go according, because Ohio State, let's say they were ranked number 4, or they're the highest team not winning conference championship. Okay, so they're the 5, and then talk about the potential bracket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I hope they do it like that too. It should be fun, and again, it's going to be on election night, so I'll be paying much more attention to the college football playoff bracket selection or whatever.
You're not going to have 2 screens. You're not going to have 2 screens going and paying attention.
No, not at all. I can't do the politics stuff. Can't get it. I just can't. So I'm glad this is on the same night. That'll give me something to pay attention to.
It is kind of weird down here in Florida. We drive about 15, 20 minutes to my uncle's place from our hotel, and there are people just sitting on the side of the road, hanging up, just holding up Trump signs, and everybody's honking as they go by, and it's weird. I just don't understand. I mean, I don't care who you're for; it doesn't matter. But that just if that sways your vote, people like that, I don't get it. You need to pick on your values and your choices, not because someone else tells you to, or someone else likes them, or whatever. Make your own choices.
Yeah, people standing on the street or in the road waving flags or doing whatever, that's not going to sway my vote any, or make me. It's probably going to make me like the candidate less, to be honest.
Yeah, well, so I'll be honest, neither one of them are good. We could do much better, but it is what we have, and we'll deal with it, I guess. So
we'll see. I'm sure everything will be magically better in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, it always is. All right, let's move on to the NFL. Let's start with the Jets. Made a trade. Adams lost to the Steelers twice in a row. Aaron Rodgers, just the Jets being Jets. I mean, I think that's what you sent me in the text. Is that what you call it?
Yeah, just the Jets being the Jets. Aaron came out, I think, yesterday on the McAfee show and said, hey, we got to have more fun. Well, Aaron, I mean, Robert Saleh tried to have fun with you. Remember that interaction that they had where Aaron pushed him back? That was supposed to be kind of a fun moment. And the problem is, when you're around Aaron Rodgers, it's all eggshells. It's pins and needles. Everybody's scared to make a mistake. You see the receivers out there, they're scared to run the wrong route. They're scared to say anything. Is he going to criticize me in the media? There is no fun with you, Aaron Rodgers, because everyone's walking on eggshells around him. So it's a little bit too late for fun. He said before the season too, which I agreed with him. He said, I've played this many years. I didn't forget how to play this game or quarterback. That's not really the point, Aaron. It's your receivers haven't played with you. Your offensive line's not used to your cadence. You saw it the first 5 weeks. Receivers were stopping their routes short. Aaron was overthrowing guys. I don't doubt that Aaron didn't forget how to play the game. The problem is his teammates don't necessarily know how to play with him. So would those 3 extra days of practice made a difference? I don't know, but it couldn't have hurt. But yeah, I mean, the Jets, it's too late at this point. I'm actually really mad at myself for picking them as my final wild card team, because I should have known better. And then you look at the steady Pittsburgh Steelers, and they just every year they're right there. They're 5-2. And I said last week I didn't think it mattered who their quarterback was in the playoffs. If Russell plays like he did in the second half in that game against the Jets, if he plays like that the rest of the season, they could be a legit team in the playoffs, given that defense. But we're going to need to see more than just one good half out of Russell. So we'll see how that progresses.
Right. But yeah, just Russell Wilson looked good. Mike Tomlin, all he does is win and get to the playoffs.
Yeah, I think he said in the post-game press conference, he's like, that's why I'm highly compensated. And he got up and left. They were talking about the decision. He's the best at the press conference stuff. So yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh, it's just, some of these franchises, these quarterbacks, these coaches, they just do it year in and year out. And you're kind of foolish if you're like me and thought this would be one of the years where Pittsburgh would live up to expectations, because they're good every single year.
All right, let's talk, Chiefs 49ers game. Let's focus on the Chiefs. They're apparently trading for Hopkins out of Tennessee. Sure is not going to hurt anything. They've got all kinds of receiver issues. He's a proven. Is he as good as he once was? Absolutely not. But he's probably exactly what they need. Just a steady hand. Need someone to run the right routes and get open, and Mahomes will find you.
Oh, it's a great trade for them. They hardly gave up anything. I mean, if they end up three-peating, then who cares about that fourth-round draft pick, which it would turn into if they make the Super Bowl or win it. So who cares about that if you three-peat? It's well worth the risk. You wonder if this is going to be not to the same extent, but you wonder if he'll revive his career with Mahomes and Reed, kind of like Randy Moss did when he went to the Patriots. Again, not to that level, but if he can just be a legit red zone threat, that's going to open some stuff up for Kelsey, who needs it. He's getting older. They should get Hollywood Brown back toward the end of the year. You hope Juju can get back here a little bit. He looked good in his first game, and then Worthy, the rookie, is still learning. But, yeah, if he can just be a quality receiver, a lot of people are saying this Chiefs team isn't that good. A lot of people are saying that, which is surprising to me. They have the best coach in the league. They have the best quarterback in crunch time in the league. He's not playing like it right now, but in crunch time, he's the best. They have one of the best defenses in the league, the best defense coordinator in the league, the best player at his position in Chris Jones in the league, and they have the best special teams. That sounds like a pretty good team to me. So I'm not gonna doubt the Chiefs. They're gonna be right there.
And they're the two-time
Now,
defending Super Bowl champs. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they'll lose in the AFC Championship or the Super Bowl. The Patriots didn't get there every year, and they didn't win it every year. So it's going to happen, but I'm not going to bet against the Chiefs. If you're gonna do better betting on them every single year than betting against them. You might be right every now and then, but as Nick Wright likes to say, the Chiefs season starts in the AFC Championship game. Since Mahomes has been the starter, they've never not made the AFC Championship game. So that's when their season starts. He likes to joke with.
Right. And was it last year was the first year it wasn't even at home. Every year before that, it was at home.
Yep. So it's the Chiefs they'll be there at the end. I would expect Hopkins should help them out. And then, the flip side, the 49ers are dealing with injuries. Brock Purdy's he's going through some struggles right now. A lot of people that want him to not be good are just writing him off, taking a victory lap. I think he'll work through this. But the key is he's got another year left on his rookie contract. So if these struggles continue through the rest of the season, I wouldn't expect San Francisco to give him a deal. I think they'd make him play out that final year. And potentially, if he plays out that final year and they're still not sure, they could franchise tag him. So it could be a couple more years before Brock Purdy gets paid if this play continues.
And this is what we don't know. And is he struggling a little bit because all his offensive weapons are hurt? I mean, that's a legit. I mean, every receiver they have has a torn ACL or whatever it is. McCaffrey hasn't played at all. Kittle's always in and out. He's played pretty much every snap. He's been the kind of one constant. I saw kind of a meme or something on Twitter or Instagram, whatever. The 49ers' healthiest receiver was shot in the chest 2 months ago.
Yeah, they've got injuries, and I think part of it is Brock Purdy's probably just trying to do too much. He's going through that stage.
I think that's it. I mean, he wants to win so bad, and he wants to do everything. He knows they're banged up, and he had it at Iowa State. He's got a little Favre in him, and he doesn't have the arm strength that Favre did. And I 100% agree with you. I think he's just trying to do too much.
Yeah, and the key will be is if he can work through that, if he can get back to playing smart football. Every quarterback goes through slumps. I mean, look at Mahomes this year. He's throwing a pick every game. But in the fourth quarter, he comes through like he always does with a big pass or a big run. So I think Brock will work through it. It's just he's a young player still. So I don't doubt that he's going to get it corrected. And I know the 49ers aren't in the playoffs right now, but I wouldn't bet against them to get this thing back on track and be there at the end of the season trying to get in.
And then kind of last point I want to hit before we call it a night here. If the playoffs started today, all 4 NFC teams would get in the playoffs. And I believe we talked about this a little bit last week. And you wouldn't have thought this at the beginning of the year, but the Bears-Commanders game, and I think that they would actually match up if it ended today in the playoffs. game on Sunday is a big deal.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think you and I both picked before the season 3 NFC North teams to make the playoffs, if I remember right. I think we both had Lions, Packers, Bears. Neither of us had the Vikings. Of course, I don't think a lot of people did. But yeah, that's a big game between 2 rookie quarterbacks. Both teams are playing well.
And Daniels is very, very questionable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got a rib injury. Mariota looked good. We know Mariota has an injury history, so hopefully Daniels can play. That'll make that game a lot more enjoyable to watch. But yeah, as of right now, all 4 NFC North teams would be in the playoffs. So I kind of hope it happens because it's never happened before. So that'd be pretty special. Most of our friends, people in the Midwest, a lot of them are fans of those 4 Midwest teams or the Chiefs.
Yeah, you do those. You kind of take Detroit out of it a little bit. There are some Lions fans I know, but you take the Bears, the Packers, and Vikings. That's most of Iowa. Unless you're a Chiefs fan, there are lots of Chiefs fans, but you go those 4 teams, it's probably 95% of Iowa.
Yeah, I think is Brett Paulson a Lions fan? I think he is.
He might be.
That might be the one Lions fan I know. For some, I could be wrong, but I think he is. And I did want to, before we get off here, I did want to touch on the Lions. This kind of goes back to the Iowa State decision to spike the ball. It's sort of different circumstances, but I did want to focus on this. So the Lions got the ball back with a little over 2 minutes, and they run a play for 4 yards, and they let the clock run down to 2 minutes. The announcer was like, "I don't understand what they're doing. They're not hurrying." I'm watching. I'm like, I know exactly what they're doing. They've decided this is the final drive. They're going to take their time, and if they score a touchdown quick, great. But they don't want to give the ball back with too much time to the Vikings, because obviously if they kick a field goal, they could get beat by a field goal. So they get down, they score, they give the Vikings the ball back with 15 seconds. The Vikings got to midfield.
I'd say the Vikings had a chance. I mean, not a good chance, but they had a chance. Yeah.
So if the Lions didn't run enough clock off, let's say the Vikings had an extra 10 seconds, that could have been enough for another pass play to get to field goal range and they lose the game. So I think you mentioned it last week with a lot of people, video game players understanding clock management, and there's more to it in a real life game. But I think it's a new school way of thinking, again, going back to Iowa State, where there's a fine line of you've actually got to run some clock in these end of game situations, because if you have a modern offense, like every high school, college, and NFL team basically does outside of the Iowa Hawkeyes, if you get past midfield with a minute left, you've got plenty of time in today's football.
Well, the way the offenses are just ran in general, you can run – well, Iowa State went 80 yards in a minute 30 with no timeouts left. And really they did it in a minute because there was 30 seconds left when they scored. They had –
and if they were playing a different team, they could have given the ball back with too much time, 30 seconds for some teams.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been enough time to get down the field for field goal range.
And Central Florida is not a good pass team, so Iowa State was able to have an interception, but there was, a good team will dink and dunk, and I believe they had their timeouts left because I really don't think UCF didn't want to call them because that would have helped Iowa State on defense. So I believe they had a couple timeouts left, and they threw a pick with 15 seconds left or whatever, but they got downfield a little bit. Their first play after that was 15 or 20 yards. They were close to midfield, maybe at the 40-yard line, and then tried to throw a 25-yard pass down the sideline, and Iowa State picked it off, so it was game over. But yeah, they were approaching midfield, and the way kickers are now, you're gonna see a 70-yard kick attempted here pretty soon by somebody, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. So yeah, it's a new school way of thinking, where if you get the ball back in a 2-minute situation, a minute and a half, you've got to walk that line of scoring and get down the field, but you also need to run some clock off, because as we just talked about, there's a lot of offenses that can get right down the field in a hurry.
All right. Anything else, Trev? We're about an hour 15, so we're plenty long here tonight. Thanks for doing this. It's a late night here. It's 11:12 here, so a little bit.
I didn't even
Morgan you asked for after dark.
Yeah, get some sleep. Obviously, World Series starts Friday. Not the two teams I wanted to see, and I'm guessing not the two you did, but it should be a good World Series. So I'm not a big baseball guy, but I definitely will be watching that.
Well, it will be interesting. I think I heard the cheapest ticket to get in on Friday night was $1,300. It'll be interesting to see what it is when it gets to New York. But yeah, two of the most expensive places, two of the two biggest cities in America, the two teams that spend as much money as anybody. For years and years and years, they were the top two. I believe the Mets are number two now. But teams that, Aaron Judge versus Shohei Ohtani, and two of the biggest stars, and it's who Fox is jumping up and down more than anybody because people are going to tune into this World Series more than people have, and they love that Ohtani's in there because now they get all the Japanese fans as well. So nobody's cheering louder than Fox.
No, Fox is very happy. I was hoping. I know he's probably not going to. Shohei was going to pitch, but I almost wonder if it's a final game and they're up by like 8 or 9 runs, if they could let him go pitch the final 3 outs or something.
Yeah, how big a deal would that be if he is healthy enough to pitch and he starts game 3? Let's just say it. They're up, or it's a 1-1 in the series, and he comes out in New York game 3 and pitches and just shuts down the Yankees. This entire Sports Center might explode.
I'd love to see it. Whether he does good or bad, I'd love to see him pitch, but I don't know if that's going to happen.
No, it would be so hard to keep that quiet if he was pitching and he was ready to go. There's just no way that there would be no talk or anything. It'd be impressive if they've kept that in wraps pretty good. But I thought of that too. It's been a year now. Usually you can pitch a little bit, and again, maybe not even just start, but just get an inning. He pitches that top of the lineup: Torres, Judge, and Stanton. He gets that lineup there.
It'd be pretty special if that happened.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I don't think so. He's gonna hit, and just him in general, his stats are just crazy. When no one's on base, at one time he was like 0 for 19, but then he was 11 for 14 with runners in scoring or runners on base. So he's batting like 500 in the series, but when no one's on, he had no hits. So
yeah, he's amazing, and it's a ton of big names, 2 big brands. So I hope it goes 7.
Yep, and it'll be it goes 5, 6, 7. It's pretty much going to go into November for sure. So we're gonna have November baseball. So, all right. Well, thanks a lot, Trev, and we'll talk next week.
All right. Have a good night. Enjoy Florida.